Some 30-odd years after Churchill telexed his fears, we know all about the Iron Curtain. Even that great statesman, with all his wisdom, could not foresee the building of a real one. But here it is. The curtain, in the shape of a wall, is in Berlin. It's not only the climate that embodies the Cold War in this divided city. Here, an inhospitable world of guard dogs, tank traps, armed patrols, and prying eyes. A world of differences, east and west, democratic thought, and unyielding political dogma. The wall symbolizes an attitude of mind even more awesome than its formidable physical presence. For this barrier, for those on the wrong side of the Brandenburg Gate, denies choice. Man has walked on the moon, but bricks, barbed wire, and concrete divide our world. In the West, our right to live as we think fit is fiercely upheld. It represents our very way of life. Within these lands lie the world's old great cities, their cultures, customs, energy, and enterprise. The people of the West, those of the North Atlantic community, are a host of different nationalities, ranging from the Arctic Ocean to the threshold of Asia, whether in the busy banks of the Bosphorus or the teeming avenues of Manhattan. In the West, they speak different tongues, worship as they please, and practice a multitude of different traditions. Yet they all share one common bond, a love of democracy, the lofty ideal which a philosopher once said is not a gift from the gods, but an endless, difficult task. The place, Brussels. The time, 9 in the morning. The scene, representatives from 16 independent nations arrive for a meeting. The agenda, arms control and disarmament. These, together with deterrence and defense, are integral parts of a policy of security. A policy that has provided peace and stability and a guarantee for our basic Western freedoms. Over 30 years ago, a group of nations first met to ensure those freedoms. They called themselves the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO for short. Today, the alliance represents the very hub of global stability, which has grown from courage, determination, and a steadfast application of human values. All this is a tall order, but to see why such resolution is vital, let's take a look at the turbulent history of our post-war world. Joyous scenes on the banks of a German river as the camera records a mighty victory. Here, communism from the East eagerly shakes hands with democracy from the West. But such amity was short-lived. Within weeks, the simple optimism of soldiers gave way to the grasping ambitions of one man, the Russian dictator Joseph Stalin. After World War II, the Western democracies demobilized their troops. Not so in Moscow, where Stalin kept more than 4 million men on a war footing and kept war industries going at full blast. Exercising such might, the Soviets became the only power to emerge from World War II with additional territory. They began by taking parts of Finland, then absorbed Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Gradually, the map of Europe grew redder and redder. Moving on, they took control of East Prussia, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Albania, and half of much beleaguered Germany. All these once proud independent nations came under the iron control of Moscow. The next place in line for Soviet expansion was Berlin. Berliners, however, wouldn't give way to a Soviet takeover, so Stalin attempted to starve the city into submission. To counter this, the West mounted the biggest airlift the world has ever seen, providing Berliners with everything from bread to coal out of the skies. But it was not without loss. Many Allied planes crashed, aiding the besieged city. But if one had been fired on, it would certainly have meant another war. After witnessing the West's resolve for over 18 months, the Soviets relented. The Berlin blockade was lifted. The world could breathe again. While Soviet expansion was underway in the East, the West was more concerned with preserving what it had. Times were hard. The old states of Europe could do little to help themselves. Then, in one of the most generous acts of all time, the United States of America offered help.
The situation is critical in the extreme. But there's no doubt whatever in my mind that if we decide to do this thing, we can do it successfully. And there's also no doubt in my mind that the whole world hangs in the balance as to what it is to be.
They called it the Marshall Plan. And from the ravages of war emerged a system destined to alter Europe like no other.
It is not a movement of parties, but a movement of people. It must be all for all. Europe can only be united by the heartfelt wish and vehement expression of the great majority of all the peoples, in all the parties, in all the freedom-loving countries, no matter where they dwell or how they vote.
In Moscow, Stalin claimed such unity would only spread capitalism. Consequently, time was not on the Soviet side, only pressure. The first nation to feel the hammer was Czechoslovakia, and it fell on one man in particular, Jan Masaryk. Foreign Minister Masaryk journeyed to Moscow to discuss his government's use of Marshall aid. He received a firm niet. Russia was too formidable a neighbor to quarrel with, and within days the pressure was seen to full effect as, via coup d'etat, the Communist Party seized control. Shortly afterwards, a simple wreath in a once democratically elected parliament announced that Jan Masaryk was dead. Found beneath a bedroom window in what the press called mysterious circumstances. So came, after 4 years of relentless Soviet growth, the birth of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, an alliance devoted to upholding Western democracy. Once again, the United States and Canada were firmly committed to defending Europe, with one of World War II's heroes, Dwight D. Eisenhower, in military command. The first task during the early years of the alliance was to forge a common defense. To avoid war, the safest thing, it seemed, was to be prepared for it. In Europe, after a handful of years, the full effect of the Marshall Plan could be seen as the continent buzzed with the building of factories, roads, and schools. The plan provided the financial stimulus, while NATO provided the protective shield. Elsewhere, from large-scale plans in Korea to domestic upheavals in East Berlin, no such progress.
Назначен маршал Советского Союза товарищ Конев. В то же время
Cruel autumn found the lovely city of Budapest full of tanks and corpses, as a groundswell of public opinion and heroism failed to match an invading Russian army. The 2-week struggle left thousands dead, and 500,000 fled their homeland. The 50s marked the height of the Cold War, a decade in which 3 more nations, Greece, Turkey, and Germany, fearing continued Soviet oppression, joined the NATO alliance. Although new terms like peaceful coexistence and détente crept into the political dictionary, the East maintained a relentless, ever-rolling arms race. A frosty wind blew across the world. The time had surely come for leaders to sit down and talk, for the alternative was unthinkable. The first crucial summit meeting was scuppered by Russia's new head of state, Nikita Khrushchev. Armed with evidence of a shot-down U.S. reconnaissance plane, he had no intention of talking peace and stormed home. For the West, it was bad timing. For the East, the best excuse thus far to escalate tension. The Cold War continued. Shortly after Khrushchev's noisy display, the revolutionary leader of Cuba, Fidel Castro, makes an appearance. A man destined to bring the world to the brink of war. American reconnaissance planes had discovered the presence of Soviet missiles on Castro's Cuba. Missiles capable of reaching deep into the heart of North America. With international tensions rising, President Kennedy told Russia's Foreign Minister Gromyko, move the missiles or risk the consequences. And then followed the most fearsome 48 hours in post-war history, before Khrushchev ordered the return of the missiles to Russia. The firmness of a young American president had prevented a deliberate Soviet attempt to alter the world balance of power. The 60s saw a world changing at a breathless pace. Even the heavens were accessible. So too was international cooperation. Years of achievement. But in Czechoslovakia, another chapter in a familiar story. In Prague, Prime Minister Alexander Dubček had been slowly moderating his party's cramped communist style, as, for example, allowing Czechs to go abroad for their holidays. But Dubček's communism with a human face, as he called it, was unacceptable to the drones from Moscow, despite the handshakes. Again, in rolled the tanks. The invading Russian, Polish, East German, Bulgarian, and Hungarian troops had been told by their Warsaw Pact masters that they were liberating the Czech people. What they were doing, of course, was exactly the opposite. As the puzzled, misinformed soldiers soon realized. But resentment and rage cannot match the suffocating presence of a 40-ton tank. Today, Czechoslovakia remains under the heel of Moscow, and Dubček's moderate policies have never surfaced again. Within months of the cruel suppression of the people of Prague, man walks on the moon. History's greatest technological triumph. But down on Earth, the same daunting tasks. The 70s brought a decade of steady progress at the conference table. But although the communists signed various agreements aimed at reducing global tension, they continued to increase their armed strength, and from Angola to Afghanistan, used it to expand their political influence. In Poland, too, harsh methods crushed a heartfelt national movement. The 1980s, and Spain joins NATO. A fleeting recent past, yet one in which much, thanks to the getting together of friendly nations, has been achieved. A history of meeting today's needs and anticipating tomorrow's. To the young, past events in Prague, Budapest, and Berlin, men like Stalin, Churchill, Khrushchev, and Kennedy seem as remote as last week's pocket money. But if we'd failed to learn from such events and such people, we wouldn't be where we are today. But come what may for our world, it remains one in which past and present intermingle to form a whole. The centuries-old changeless bustle in the bazaars of Istanbul is little different from the 20th century hustle in the skyscrapers of New York. Both are hymns to the vitality of the same system. Yet a system as fragile as any, one that can and often does fall flat in its face. That's the risk you take when you pursue that delicate philosophy conceived amidst these sunny hills overlooking the Aegean. Here, Pericles said, we are a model to others. Our Constitution is called a democracy, with power not in the hands of a minority, but the whole people. Today, the need to watch and ward, defend and protect our Western democratic heritage is as vital as ever. For facing NATO forces over distant hills sits the largest arsenal of offensive weaponry the world has ever seen. last 20 years, the Russians and their Warsaw Pact allies have dramatically increased their armed strength. They far outnumber NATO forces in tanks, ships, missiles, and men. Faced with such growing might, it's impossible to relax. A balance of terror governs our world, a terror that cannot be ignored. In a garden in Paris stand the works of Auguste Rodin, the great sculptor. From the legendary thinker to the brave burghers of Calais, Rodin captured in bronze the unquenchable human spirit. The strength and independence so vital to human freedom. On the streets of a European city, a living embodiment of that freedom as people protest against what rankles them. For them, however, there's no specter of a gulag, no 3,000-mile forced journey to an unforgiving Siberian wilderness. Such is life in our world, a world of free speech, free thought, free press, free trade unions, and free elections. One in which so much is taken for granted, so much merely accepted, because that's the way we are. Few of us know anything else. In Berlin, there are those who do know something else, and their memories are long. Here they'll tell you about one special day, August 12th, 1961. That day, over 3,200 people from the workers' state of East Germany crossed the barriers to what they firmly believed would be a better life. The very next day, the gate was slammed shut. From now on, freedom had to be won dangerously. Since the wall was built, nearly 100 have died trying to escape. All wasted deaths, yet none more tragic than young Peter Fechter's. Peter Fechter was shot in the back and left for 5 hours to die. Who can leave an 18-year-old boy to perish slowly? Here by the wall, such things happen. This malignant piece of engineering was not designed to respect life. The wall is a barrier that stands vividly for the difference between East and West. On one side, a society fenced in. On the other, a world where we can come and go as we please. The values we hold dear have taken centuries to come by. A way of life as old as civilization itself, and one that has to be guarded, defended, maintained. For the alternative is as awesome as the heavy, silent concrete of the wall itself. Our Western world is one of many nations and many flags with different languages and ways of life. But we're drawn together by what we have in common. Our post-war age has emerged far richer than many thought possible in the late 40s. In Europe, growth and stability turned the nightmare of a war-torn, divided continent into the reality of a wealthy, prosperous, united continent. Today, amidst a host of problems, not least just getting home from work, much remains to be done. For it's not a world as most would like it, but as it is. A world in which past and present, the boss, the worker, the soldier, the administrator, are all indispensable parts in the machinery of human progress. Progress that cannot seed from suppression, but can only blossom from the very way of life, the culture and freedom of every member of the North Atlantic community.